Webster is next on BC TV.
Good morning. Sometimes you'd think the whole world was moving to the right. Look at Reagan in the States. Look at the Western Canada MPs. But something happened in Vancouver on November the 14th and 15th. I don't know whether to take it seriously or whether it's a complete phony and diversion. Just look at it and remember.
With the ballots all in and calculated and scrutinized, we have 219 Westwood, 105 Dayton.
That was the election as leader for the provincial Progressive Conservative Party in British Columbia of the tiny, perfect leader, Brian Westwood. And he's here this morning, along with his right-hand, and I mean right-hand henchman, Peter Pollen, who's the deputy leader of the Tory party. So why do I think the whole world's moving to the right? Because next on the program this morning is an outspoken right-winger from Prince George, Frank Oberle, Tory MP again, and he has a plan to ease the income tax in the north, to give the people in the north less income tax to pay than the poor, depressed people in the south. We'll tackle him about that. And then, in line with my ecological conscience, which doesn't show very often on this program, I've got an American called Richard Ellis, who's going to talk, not Greenpeace style, but I suppose in a good, solid fashion, about whales. He's here for the aquarium. And first we're going to tackle Brian, your name again? Westwood, is it?
Westwood, yeah.
The new Tory leader in British Columbia, and Peter Pollen, after the break.
Make no mistake about it. The party in power is bereft of ideas or ideals. It is a party of unelectable liberals hiding in the tattered weeds of the Social Credit Party.
Not to be snide, but to be perfectly serious. Brian Westwood has taken the most unenviable political job in British Columbia. I challenge you, Mr. Westwood, as the new leader of the Conservative Party, to name the last half-dozen leaders who preceded you and flopped.
Well, I can name them. Let's see. We've got John DeWolf, Davy Fulton, Darrell, Scott Wallace, Vic Stevens. I don't think I missed anybody, Jack.
Nobody missing?
Don't think so.
That's only 5. From Anscombe on, we had Anscombe, who else? Davy Fulton?
Davy Fulton. We had Davy Fulton, John DeWolf, Darrell Warren, Scott Wallace, Vic Stevens. I'm missing one.
You're missing one. We can't remember him because you're liable to be sunk without trace at the same time, are you not? Why did you take on this thankless, moneyless task as leader of the Progressive Conservatives in British Columbia when you know as well as I do that this province is polarized, social credit and socialism?
Jack, the good thing about it is that when it was, Alan Fotheringham said at the time we became a
Alan
two-party
who?
system. Alan Fotheringham, you might have heard of him.
Used to be a local columnist.
Used to be a local columnist.
Now
But
lost in the Eastern Media Mafia.
He said at the time that we became a two-party system, that we would ensure at some future date the re-election of the NDP, and he's quite correct, because if you have a two-party system, you only need the swing of a few small voters. What makes it different this time is that the polarization is starting to break down. We're sitting now at a bigger percentage of the popular vote than we've had in many years. The membership of our party is larger now than it has been in many years. Suffice to say we've doubled it within the last 6 months,
Well, double
Jack.
10 is 20.
Pardon me?
Double 10 is 20.
Well, it may well be, but there's an awful lot of people in this province, and I've been across this province several times in the last few months, who are saying, hey, I don't like the government I've got. I wasn't too fussy about the government I had. And if you forget the right-left labels and just take a look at the actions of the two governments, you can't blame the people for thinking that. we can become the rallying point for those who want to see the return of wholesome and good government to British Columbia.
But
That's
why
about
would
time
they,
we had it.
why would they choose Brian Westwood? The only public job you've held before, if I recall correctly, is chairman of a school board in the Valley.
Jack, I think one of the best things that I have going for me is the fact that I am a fresh face. We are building a team of bright young people across the province who have a lot of municipal experience. That's the grassroots end of it. That's where you get to know the people. A lot of the people across the province that are coming to our party are, if you like, big frogs in a small pond, but they've got fresh ideas, and that's what we need. You look down the benches in the House on the social credit side and on the NDP side, you see the same faces that were there 15 years ago. You wonder why we have bad government. They're old, they're tired. There's nothing new coming out of there anymore.
How old are you now, Brian?
39.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a florist, Jack. I have shops in the Vancouver area.
Oh, an affinity with Grace McCarthy. Both she and you each run chains of florists' shops.
Well, Grace is out of the florist business now. I knew her when she was in it. She's still a friend of mine. We don't have to be enemies. We have a different philosophy.
Are you officially a turncoat from social credit to the Tories?
I left the Social Credit Party when it left me, and that was when Bill Bennett was elected as leader. I didn't like some of the people that came on board. I didn't like their policies. I joined the Conservative Party at that time, and I've been very active in it, Jack.
What about your deputy leader, Peter Pollen? I remember well when you ran as a shining social credit candidate in Oak Bay.
Years ago, Jack. We all have a reputation to live down, I guess.
And you got beaten.
Yeah, I got beaten in a possible by-election, but I was hoping then that the Social Credit Party under W.A.C. Bennett could be rejuvenated into a Conservative Party, and that the old man would retire and a new bloom would start, but it never happened.
So now you're the kind of power behind the throne. You're the deputy leader of the new Tories.
Oh, I'm not the power behind the throne, but I'm a very vigorous participant.
Are you going to call them the new Tories?
Yes.
Yes, we are, indeed.
That's
You
going to
betcha.
be your name.
The new Conservative.
Conservative Party of British Columbia.
Nothing wrong with Tories.
There's nothing wrong with Tories, Jack, but look, we've got some fresh ideas. We've got a fresh approach that's going to be unveiled in the next few months. We think people are going to be pleased to see it. They want to change.
It is really a new Conservative Party, I will admit. Do you know why I admit that?
Tell me, Jack.
Because Joe Clark will not tear up, your Conservative national leader, will not tear up his membership in the Provincial Social Credit Party.
No.
Jack, that's nonsense. Let me
You know what I'm saying.
let me be very candid on this.
Please do.
Before becoming leader, I was the provincial vice president of the party. I spent a lot of time talking to Joe Clark and a lot of time in Ottawa. And I can tell you something right now, that there is a better relationship between the two wings of our party than there's been in many, many years. We've just moved into new offices in downtown Vancouver that finally give us the tools to do the job. There's a conscious effort right now on behalf of our federal party to strengthen the provincial parties across the province, and they also know that Bill Bennett's in
In the
trouble. They
last
have to.
election, Joe Clark came out here and snubbed your then leader, Vic Stevens. Is that not correct?
Jack, I'm not Vic Stevens, and I don't want to talk about the past. I have a good working relationship with our federal brethren right now, and I want to keep it.
Will they give you money out of their federal tin box, the slush funds?
Yes.
They are now.
They are now.
How much?
Can't tell you. But enough to do the job.
Did Chuck Cook not attack all of you terribly for your weakness as Tories at your own convention?
Listen, there were a lot of things that were reported in the press that Chuck was misquoted on. What Chuck said, in effect, and
Why
I
are
agree.
they always misquoted?
Well, Jack, that's life. You know, you
don't
guys,
get
you guys in the
misquoted.
media are never easy.
You don't get misquoted in television. Your words come out of your own little mouths.
Okay, what Chuck said was that the provincial party has to pull itself up by its own bootstraps. That I agree with.
And he said he won't get any federal support until you do.
Well, that was an individual comment of an individual member, and we're a family, and not all members of a family agree all the time on everything. He made his remarks, and he has to live with them.
I want to find out now from each of you which is the more paranoid about social credit's performance. You start, Mr. Leader of the New Tories.
Well, I'm not paranoid about social credit's performance, Jack. I don't think I have to comment on it. They're dying by their own hand and by their own policies. I'm concerned about the future, and I'm concerned with presenting a fresh, new alternative to the people of BC. They're tired of the two old line parties. Nothing is happening. You tell me what Dave Barrett's doing right now.
Dave Barrett is sitting on his hands hoping that Bennett will self-destruct.
That's right. But he was also the leader of a government that was thrown out of office after 3.5 years overwhelmingly. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of people across this province that are saying, hey, the only reason he's a threat is because the other guy's falling apart and it's time for a change.
But I want you to be specific, gentlemen, about what Bennett has done wrong which will cause him to be defeated. Pretend I know nothing about politics, which I sometimes think is the case. But be specific. Why should I, if I were a social credit, now turn on the old man's son and let the hated, godless socialists back into power?
Well, Jack, let's talk about that. There's a great trend towards centralization of power in Victoria under social credit, whether it's the new Planning Act or the Utilities Act or the Financial Act, whatever. The tremendous trend toward taking away the power of local government. Also, there's more committees and commissions and boards that compartmentalize government and buffer them from the people. You've got the Urban Transit Authority out there now, a bunch of people that, in my view, are simply not professional enough to do the job, spending millions of the taxpayers' dollars. And they're now talking about increasing the gas tax 2%. We still don't have or 2 cents a gallon. We still don't have a rapid transit system. ICBC is a total disaster. Even with the rate increase, it's going to lose millions of dollars. You've got the people of British Columbia paying very high rates. The people of British Columbia don't know it yet, but they're out of the insurance business. There's no actuarial basis for it anymore. It's been decided by the political whims of the Premier.
Well, the people know they're out of the insurance business. They know that they've got a fair system by which everyone will be rated equally.
It's an unfair system.
Commercial. What's unfair about it?
Well, it's unfair, Jack, because, first of all, insurance, if it's going to operate, has to operate on the basis of classifications and on the basis of territories. Now, what you have here is a situation where Victoria, which has been a traditional area in the province that's enjoyed low rates because it's got had low accident coverage, going up 80%. You've got the youngsters in a bracket that causes a lot of accidents now receiving a break. You've got the senior citizens that are being told that they're different from the rest of us. So you were going to go up 70, but we'll now subsidize you out of general revenue. It's a mess.
Policy question, and don't dodge it, and we'll try it on Peter. If you people ever control the government in the foreseeable future by knocking off enough seats to create a minority government, will you bring back the private insurance companies to compete with ICBC?
I would think so, Jack, yes. I think it's essential.
Yes, I would agree.
You'd bring back private insurance?
Jack, two things would happen if private insurance... Yes.
The new Tories will bring back private insurance companies.
But let me say why. If you bring them back, first of all, the private insurers are going to make ICBC efficient, and ICBC is going to keep the private insurers honest. And that was the plan when it was originally created. Bennett changed the rules. On the hustings, he said, I want private insurance back. They came back, and what happened? He changed the rules, they can't compete, and they had to leave. That's wrong. Competition is what ICBC needs.
Free enterprise will return in its most brutal forms if these men get enough seats in the House to bring down the NDP or social credit. Is that correct?
Not in its brutal form, Jack. I mean, I can't...
And one of the
I've got
complaints
to
against Bennett is that Bennett didn't do anything to kind of break up the NDP's operation, did he?
Except the better aspects of the NDP operation. I mean, he's sold, he's in the process of selling off residential land banks now because it's NDP, and yet he's buying BC Place for residential development. The big problem with Bill Bennett, I think he's a good man, but he's way over his head. You talk about background. He has
good man, but a poor politician.
A good man, but no, I don't know about politician. He just hasn't got the administrative background or capability to run a province this size.
Bit stupid, perhaps?
Well, I wouldn't say
I'm trying to get you to be extravagant.
I think he's a good man, but he's way over his head. It's the Peter principle.
Webster and the Westwood Pollen Tory axis, the new Tories, after the break. Brian Westwood is the new Tory leader of the new Tory party in BC, and Peter Pollen is his deputy. Now, for instance, your tactical plan must be to run a handful of candidates and secure seats, am I correct, in the next election, when it comes within the next 2 years?
Well, Jack, I think it'll be 2 years at least. We've got a lot of building work to do. We've done a lot of building work in the last 6 months. For the first time, I can honestly say that we have the makings of an organization. We've got a long way to go.
It had just collapsed before then, had it?
Jack, it's been many a year since it was as fine-tuned and as good and efficient an organization as it should have been.
You are a politician. You just told me a moment ago that you had no organization 6 months ago.
Not in terms of what I would like to see. I'm a businessman, Jack. I believe in systems. I'm systems-oriented. But let's talk, you asked me a specific question about candidates. You know, when we started, we adopted a 5 to 7 year plan. In the next election, obviously, we are going to go with the best people that we've got. We're going to arm them with the best policies we can. This time, they're going to have the money to do the job. I would rather say this, that rather than saying specifically we're going to run 5 to 7 candidates, we're going to run as many good people as we've got, but no more sacrificial lambs. That's over.
Let me get that again from you.
We're going to run good people and not just people for the sake of running people. They've got to be outstanding people. But
mostly on the lower mainland in Vancouver.
Oh, no, we've got a couple of excellent possibilities in northern British Columbia. But our objective isn't in any way to harm the free enterprise vote or to harm the Social Credit Party. We feel that they're in self-destruct. What we would also like to point out very much, though, is that the real menace to the growth of this province, the prosperity of this province, the harmony of this province, is the NDP. The NDP right now are playing it really slick. You know, three-piece, $300 suits on the leader of the opposition, quiet profile. But behind that quiet profile is their alliance with Trudeau to turn this country into a central state, to centralize Ottawa, centralize the whole country in Ottawa, also to kill Confederation, also to nationalize all the oil industry. Mr. Barrett is playing it much too foxy for us. We would like to get him out front and to tell the people what he's going to deliver.
What did you call the NDP?
I called them the little red rump of the Liberal Party, and they are. They're falling right in line with Trudeau. You know, let's take a look at this country. It's the Barretts and the Blakeneys and the Broadbents right now, that when the country's standing at the crossroads, trying to pick a new constitution and pick their way through the minefield, when we're talking about fundamentally altering the system of government, that are falling right in line and letting Trudeau lead us down the garden path. And thank God that the Conservative Party exists. We're becoming known now as the party of Western Canada, and it's about time.
Oh,
and I think people recognize
do I see a little tinge of separatism in that, the party of Western Canada?
No, Jack, not separatism at all. It's about time.
Nobody else speaks for their country.
That's right. Look, Bill Bennett's chief liability is that right now there is nobody in Ottawa to speak for the people of British Columbia. That's a fact. They don't have a federal party. They don't have a philosophy. Their philosophy is based on the funny money theories of Major Douglas, which half of the Socreds don't even know who he is.
That's a cheap shot.
Well,
that's
not a
gone.
cheap shot. They don't have a philosophy. You tell me what it is.
Free enterprise conservatism with enough populism to do enough NDP things to stay in power.
Nonsense, nonsense. The chief aim of the Social Credit Party is to stay in power. The chief reason that they're going to be defeated in the next election, whether we're in it or whether we're out of it, is because they are incapable of governing this province in the manner it should be.
I think you're all the same. We don't trust anybody nowadays, do we?
Oh, Jack, I think that's one of the things we have to deal with. You know, the people out there today think government's too big, they think it's inalienable, they think it's inaccessible. We have to change that. The young people, too many young people are turned off with government. We've got to get back, and it's an old cliche about getting back to the grassroots. But let me tell you something. One of the chief things that this party's doing is getting out into the grassroots and listening to people and listening to what they want in British Columbia. This is one of the last places in the world that's got
You may only have been on the school board, but you certainly talk like a slick politician, the grassroots, the people, you know, and all this garbage. What about BRIC?
What about BRIC?
What about it?
Give
me your opinion of Bennett's conduct on BRIC, where the NDP set up these public companies in the government's name, and then our boy gives it away and we have the Kaiser deal.
Well, I think the idea of bringing the resources of the province into a corporation that the people could buy.
Good one.
And broadening that participation in the economics of the province was a good idea. But like so many things that Bill Bennett has done, it's turned out to be an administrative nightmare.
To be a brick. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Let's get back to something else. He said a moment ago that you're not going in to destroy social credit, or words to that effect, didn't you?
That's right. We think it's destroying itself.
So that means, therefore, that in the next election, if you did win that handful of seats, like Oak Bay and two others, small handful of seats, you'd be pledged to support social credit if they were in a minority position. Is that right?
Well, Jack, I think if you support anything, it's what you can exact in return for that support. God knows we're not socialists, and I don't think Dave Barrett and I could ever reach an accommodation, or Peter and Dave Barrett.
We would be something like the opposition to the minority government of Ontario, which has been carried on quite effectively for the last 3 or 4 years.
How long did it take a new Conservative Party to grow to government in any other part of this country? Can you name one?
In Alberta, it took 4 years.
Let's talk about
in Manitoba, it took 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, they, of course, had an NDP opposition. It was easier.
In Ontario, it's been the government for 37 years.
That's right. And if you look around Canada and you look at the provinces that have good, stable government, you look at the Conservative Party in those provinces.
Let me think of them. Lloyd.
Stable.
Stable.
Manitoba, stable. Ontario, stable. But they're going a little bit to Ottawa for us.
They're getting a little regional.
Guess who's going to be here Friday morning to tell us he loves us?
Who?
Bill Davis, the Premier of Ontario. Isn't that funny? Hey? It's wonderful.
Open the phone lines early that day.
I will do. Now, let's get back to the constitutional thing for 1 minute, and 1 minute only, and that is the fact that you feel that nobody speaks for us in Ottawa now? Nobody at all? Not even the Conservative MPs
No,
from the
we
West?
feel that if we had a strong Conservative Party in the province of British Columbia with some seats, if not the government, if we had some seats, we would have a lot better voice through the federal Conservative Party in Ottawa. We are very fearful of the current trends of this constitutional debate.
If you crystallize it down to the bottom of the pot, you have the Western Conservative MPs speaking for British Columbia. You bet you have a solid identifiable position by our federal party. You tell me what Bill Bennett's position is, I wish I knew. I've received lots of garbage in the mail, but aside from the worry about taxes, which Ottawa has a perfect right to put on, and Bennett knows it, there is no other identifiable position of the provincial government.
That's an excellent point.
All right, give me a couple of other planks in your platform if you have one.
Well, Jack, I think, first of all,
Industrial
we're
development,
conservatives. Industrial development,
Private
housing,
housing,
less
no
government.
low-cost housing.
Co-op housing.
NDP ID.
No, NDP ID. As a matter of fact, it's probably the greatest thing outside the NDP philosophy.
It's the way of the future, Jack.
What else?
Well, you know, you get a whole new deal on resources. God knows that we need one. You've got to get BRIC into the position of what it was supposed to be. It should not be an operating company. It was the Premier that stumped this province and said BRIC is going to provide venture capital for new ideas and new technology on the frontier in British Columbia. What's it done? It's bought either a company like Kaiser Resources wholly, okay, which is of no benefit to the people of the
Edgar
province.
Kaiser a new job.
Well, it could give Dave Barrett control of the coal industry in this province if he becomes government next time.
Your Social Credit government has already got control under its new BC Utilities Commission.
They don't need to buy it.
They don't need to buy it. But the point being, of what benefit was it to the people of British Columbia to buy 20% of McMillan Bloedel? None at all. It has created but one job, and that is the job of Bruce Howe at $250,000 a year.
Maybe the plan is for BRIC to take over McMillan Bloedel if they can.
BRIC has to be totally reworked. In my view, it should be providing venture capital for new ideas and new technology in British Columbia. It should be taking small pieces of bright, young companies on the horizon that are going to be giants one day.
And developing the petrochemical industry. The BRIC should be instrumental in applying technology to our natural resources.
Are you still in the auto business?
No, I'm not, Jack.
So you're not a used car dealer?
No,
That makes you a legitimate conservative,
there's-
a non-social creditor.
There's nothing wrong with a good radio announcer, a TV announcer, or a car salesman if they're good people. This idea of labeling people with pejorative adjectives puts me off, you know. Davy Barrett says the so-creds are a group of car dealers. What's wrong with car dealers?
What
Any
are
more
the
than social
NDP?
workers?
A group of social workers.
Misguided social workers, that's
And
right.
the Conservatives are good, hard-headed businessmen with a humanistic touch. Is that correct?
Salt of the earth, Jack.
Which the
Salt of
province
earth.
needs.
39 you are.
39.
Think you'll be Premier of the province before you draw your Canada pension plan?
Hey, Jack, listen. We're in the renaissance of the Conservative Party. We're on a crusade, and it's going to gather momentum. It's not going to lose momentum.
We've got a dream.
A vision.
I hope it
vision.
doesn't become a nightmare.
Well, it's a nightmare now, and we want to turn that dream into
My
a
thanks
reality.
to Peter Pollen, Deputy Leader, and to Brian Westwood, the new leader of the Catch the Blue Wave New Tories, right?
Right.
New Conservative.
Another Tory after this. Can you stand it? Frank Oberle from Prince George after the break. One fault, if there is a fault in this Webster program, is that we don't have enough people from the north on the program, right, Frank?
That's right. That's right.
Frank Oberle is the Tory MP for Prince George Peace River. And Frank's been kicking up stink about the oil patch depression in Fort St. John and Fort elsewhere. Do you still stand by your political line that the oil rigs are moving out of the north in large numbers because of the stupidities of Trudeau's and Lalonde's energy budget?
No question about it, Jack. It's nothing to do with the political line. It's reality. You know, if you were in the oil business, and you would get a return of $22 a barrel in the United States or in other parts of the world with more hospitable political climates, and you got $6.30 in northern British Columbia, where would you go drilling? Whether you're a Canadian company or multinational companies, the scheme is to get rid of the multinationals and assume 50% ownership of the Canadian oil patch.
Pat Walsh, the mayor of Fort St. John, says that you have hurt his community by your talk of doom and gloom and that you're making things worse instead of better. What do you say to Mayor Walsh, who may well be watching this morning?
Well, I say to Pat that we'll probably be okay this winter. But the
You're backing down a little bit.
Well, the fact is that you can't just pick up a rig and go. There are a lot of jobs connected to it and certain obligations under the lease. The fact is that the 74 or 76 rigs that are in preliminary stages of drilling and locating may not all locate this winter, and I've got this from good authority. We know who the people are that are moving out, and they're moving out now. And I know that Pat is worried about that. He knows that you know the growth that the town has undergone in the last 2.5 years. You know, from 300 hotel rooms to 1,000. The farmers are not going to stay in $50 hotel rooms. If the oil patch moves out, it's going to make things just a little dicey. And it's not just the oil jobs that we're losing, it's the service industry, the machine shops, the hotels, the motels. The whole economy is going to suffer.
Talking about Fort St. John?
Fort Nelson.
Fort Nelson?
Yeah, mainly the whole Peace River country, the whole north.
Which companies are moving out? Can you tell me?
I've got a whole list of them. I don't want to compromise anybody. Yeah, they're all sitting together talking. They can't live with this new energy scheme.
Is there nothing good in the energy budget?
No, there's
nothing good at all in the energy budget?
Nothing good at it. Not for the consumer, not for the companies, not for the economy. There's nothing good in it.
Doesn't the average Canadian, on an emotional basis, at least welcome the chance through Petro-Canada or other Crown corporations to buy back some of our industry instead of leaving it totally in American hands?
Who are you buying it from? The multinationals are not going to leave the country, Jack. They've got no place else to go. They are in the United States already. They're all over the world. They're going to be here. They're going to make these backroom, invisible handshakes with the bureaucrats in Ottawa. You know, they're $40 million to Imperial Oil to buy their confidence in the Canadian oil patch. What about Canadian Hunter? Who is giving them anything to keep them here?
Well, they're a $100 million business, but they're still
small. It's all moving to the United States. They're the people that developed the deep basin gas that'll secure our natural gas supplies for the next 100 years. And it's a small Canadian company, started in 1973, and now they're moving out. Brings tears to my eyes when I look at that story.
In other words, you'd much rather have these people do it than Petro-Can, a quasi-Crown corporation.
Well, yeah, you know my views on Petro-Can.
No, tell me about Petro-Can.
Well, I happen to think that Western civilization and the North American continent was built on free enterprise, which in my opinion means choice. I am for Petro-Can. There's never any doubt about that, and the party has always been for Petro-Can. But we'd like to give people a choice. You see, with BRIC, I don't like the way they're operating there either, but I don't have to buy shares in BRIC. You know, I can sell them. And if the people that appointed directors in BRIC are making too many mistakes, I can kick them out of office. But you're a shareholder in Petro-Can, whether you like it or not. Whether you're a senior citizen that can't buy enough food and pay the rent, you're a shareholder in Petro-Can. It means nothing to you. That's the difference, you see, between free enterprise and personal choice and individual freedom.
Give me one sentence on the Liberal performance under Trudeau and Lalonde, just to let people see you're still a right-wing Tory.
Well, listen, we're going through a coup d'etat. This country is going to be fundamentally changed. The relationship between the individual and the state, if Trudeau gets away with this reform package, is going to be fundamentally changed and altered, and our system of government will be fundamentally changed. Parliament will no longer be the supreme agency in the country, and you can no longer go to your member of Parliament if your rights are infringed in any way, shape, or form.
What are you talking about? A coup d'etat?
Well, that's what it is, and there won't be a shot fired.
In what way will it be a coup d'etat?
And that we're going into a unitary state and into a semi-socialist system of the type that is totally alien to our whole way of life.
But he wants to put our rights in the hands of our eminent judges in our courts. How can you possibly object to that?
Who are accountable to no one. You know, I prefer the rights to be where they belong. I prefer rights that are earned by people. All this, you know, socialist scheme creates nothing but unreasonable expectations. There's no such thing as an ultimate and an absolute right.
Do you really expect me to believe that what Trudeau is planning is a move to a U.S.-type constitution with a packed Supreme Court of Canada, which interprets our rights according to his wishes?
No, worse than that. In the United States, you have some control over who your judges are. You elect your judges. They have
Some judges.
Well, all right, but the Congress has something to say about who the Supreme Court judges are. And they, too, make stupid decisions. You know, there's a fellow by the name of Rand. You know my feelings about the guy that, because of an entrenched constitution, decided that in this country the freedom of association means something much different than what it was intended for as a cardinal principle of democracy. In other words, you're free to associate, but you're compelled to belong, you know, which is a pretty weird twist of fate. Would have never gone through Congress or the Senate or to a Canadian House of Commons. But that's what we live with because of one Supreme Court judge over who was accountable to no one at the time.
Listen, you're talking about the Rand formula.
Mm-hmm.
The Union Rand formula.
Yeah.
The penny just dropped. Tell you what I'm going to do now. After the break, I'm going to talk to you briefly about this plan you have for preferential tax rates for people who live north
Equitable. Right.
well, preferential or equitable, depends where you live, for people who live north of 60 degrees, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Does that include Prince George north of 60?
No, it doesn't.
Where does 60 begin?
60 is the territories.
The territories.
Yeah.
But you would also have equitable or preferential for people in Prince George.
No.
No.
Well, Prince George is out of the second tax zone as well, but everything north of Prince George, Mackenzie, the Peace River
Okay,
country.
the Oberle tax plan to develop the north, equity income tax, is that right?
Right.
With extra money for all those who live north of, less tax for all those who live north of Prince George.
North of Prince George, yeah.
And I'll take phone calls on it very quickly after the break. I should tell you we'll take calls from the north this morning on the main lines. Collect to 420-3336. Frank, what is this tax advantage north of 60 degrees?
What it is, the report is called Equity and Fairness. And
Who did the report?
I did.
Who asked you to?
Nobody.
Nobody.
It's one of the things members of Parliament should do. You know, bring fresh new ideas. We've got researchers and
Okay,
stuff.
give me your fresh new ideas.
The idea is that because of the Tax Act being predicated on the fact that you should pay in accordance with your ability to pay. It's the Robin Hood principle, which came in 1918 to pay off some of the war debts, sort of a temporary scheme. I say that one's ability to pay personal income tax varies very dramatically in accordance with where you live in this country. We have areas in Canada where the cost of living, the basic cost of living, the essential items that you buy, is 20, 40, and 60% higher than it is in the 100-mile sort of cultural corridor along the American border. And therefore I'm saying that we should have a different scale of income tax, different grades of income tax to supplement in some way or to equalize the cost of living.
Conversely, are you advocating that where the income is much less than in the wealthy parts of the cultural corridor along the border, that they pay less? I thought that's the way it worked now.
No, well that's the way the system is now. If your income is low.
Okay, let's be specific. Give me one area where you say there should be a different income tax rate for the people because of a 40 or 50% higher living cost.
I've broken the country down into 3 tax zones using basically the Australian system. Let me just quote a short paragraph from the Australian system, which goes something like this. For the purpose of granting to residents of the prescribed area an income tax concession in recognition of the disadvantages to which they are subject because of uncongenial climatic conditions, isolation, and high cost of living in Zone A, and to a lesser extent in Zone B, in comparison with parts of Australia not included in the prescribed areas, a taxpayer who is a resident of the prescribed area in the year of income tax or tax is entitled to his assessment in respect of income of that year of income. In other words...
You've lost me on that. If I can put it simply, if you live in an area such as the Northwest Territories, who can see us now, and where your cost of living is how much higher?
Well, in some areas, it's 3 times what it is here. We've got areas in Canada where you pay $5 for a gallon of gasoline because it's flown in by airplane.
And you're saying that these people should pay much less tax. How much less?
If my proposal is accepted, there'd be no income, no personal income tax in the territories at all.
Okay, that's...
My report concludes that 5% of the population, which occupies 80% of our land mass, pays $470 million a year too much in income tax by any scale of equity and fairness.
Give me that again. 5% of the population,
which occupies 80%
of the land mass in the territories and the Yukon?
And the northern part of the provinces, the 2 territories.
Northern part of BC, northern part of Alberta, northern part of Manitoba, northern part of Saskatchewan, northern part of Quebec.
All of the northern areas of the provinces.
And all of the territories and all of the Yukon.
Yes.
And they
pay
contribute...
$470 million too much in income tax.
And you'd wipe out personal income tax in these areas?
Well, you know, with certain upper limits. In the territories be wiped out. In Zone B, which is the northern parts of the provinces, you will get an additional $5,000 personal deductions plus 25% of your normal deductions.
Are you the first one to put forward this idea? What reaction have you had, if any, in the House of Commons?
Well, I managed to have the report tabled before the Standing Committee on Northern Affairs, and I'm putting together an all-party committee of members representing northern ridings, and it's receiving some attention by the Department of Finance. It's not a new idea in the sense that...
By the time we pay off the Indians umpteen billions of dollars and give tax concessions to everybody else in the
well,
north,
Jack, if
will
the
there be any money left to run the government?
If the people in the north were to all move to Vancouver and buy themselves a little acreage like you do here on the islands...
Don't get personal.
You know, we can't all live in Victoria and Vancouver.
Thank
because
God.
If we all move down, this place here would dry up and blow away. You know, we're the people that are manning the frontier, and it's only fair. You see, if you're a federal bureaucrat, for instance, and you live in any of these tax zones, you're getting from between $2,000 to $12,000 a year in northern living allowance.
Just a minute. If I work for Indian Affairs or some other layabout job in the federal government,
right?
You told me that layabout job.
No, that's your...
That's my description.
Yeah. I'm becoming a moderate Tory.
That's a change, isn't it? I presently get a cash living allowance, tax-free, of up to how much?
From between $2,000 and $12,000 a year.
And of course, if I work for one of the big oil companies or one of the really wealthy multinationals, I will also get the same recognition.
One steel worker phoned me from the tungsten mine. He gets $24,000 a year in income in northern allowances.
Well, why should he get a tax benefit?
Well, he wouldn't. You see, his northern allowance would be reduced by the tax benefit. I say that if it's difficult and costly for a federal bureaucrat and an executive or a union person of a large corporation to cope with northern living and the costs of it and other hardships associated with it, it's equally as difficult for every other person.
Sounds great if you live in the north. Any calls on this topic? One from Terrace. Go ahead, please. Where are you in Terrace?
Mr. Oberle, Mr. Webster?
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Webster?
Go ahead,
Mr. Oberle?
please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The thing that surprises me is that we've heard this same old story before about what they're going to promise the North. The only people with the money are living down south. The poor Northerner hasn't got a buck to his name, trying to keep his cost of living somewhere within reason. And I don't know, it seems kind of funny to me when Mr. Oberle comes along with this so-called pie-in-the-sky idea, and that's just what it is.
You don't believe him?
You go to work with the money in the Northerner's hands, he'll do it. He doesn't need the big shot from down south to develop it. And all we're going to get is a big shot up here.
Well, do you believe in some kind of equity and fairness that's universal through the Tax Act? Or do you believe in the present system where only if you're a federal bureaucrat or an executive of a large corporation, you're entitled to some northern living allowances, and the rest, you know, fight for themselves?
I don't think he understands what you're saying, and if he does, he doesn't believe you.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a new idea. I'm not going to. It's not carved in stone. I'm in no position to implement it. All I can do is promote it, and I'm doing that.
Thank you. Here's one from Falkland, which isn't that far north. Go ahead, please. Hello. Gladys, they don't know they're coming up. I'll take a break and we'll line up the calls after these messages. Frank Oberle, Tory MP from Prince George Peace River, is advocating tax break for Northerners. The territories, they'd get the full break, right?
Right.
Give me the parallel lines in the other provinces. North of where in BC?
In BC, it's north of the 55th parallel.
Right.
In Alberta, north of the 54th. In Saskatchewan, north of 52. In Manitoba, north of 50. And in other provinces, in the Queen Charlotte Islands and islands off the coast, you know, they'll get.
They would get the break too.
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead, please, to Frank Oberle. That's you. Something wrong with the phones this morning. Are you there? Are you there? Why, can you not hear me when I say are you there? Well, speak up then, just a minute. Speak up.
Hello.
Yes. Monday morning.
Go ahead.
Try somebody else. Go ahead, please. There's something wrong with the phone connections this morning. Can you hear me now? Hold on a second. I want to check all the lines. Can you hear me now? No, I can't hear me. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear me. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear me. Is the connection right over there? Can you hear me? No, I can't hear me. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear me. Hold on, please. Put down the sound on that a little bit. We'll see if we can fix this while we're on the air. Yeah, now let's try it again at the bottom. I apologize for this technical foul-up this morning,
Right,
Frank.
okay. North is a long ways away.
Humiliating and embarrassing, and I wanted to call from the north this morning, but there's something wrong somewhere in the system. Let's get somebody down to look at it. Are you there? Hello? I give up. Take a break. Frank, I want to show people that I'm always in full control even when things technically go wrong. And I must say that they don't very often go wrong. And you've been telling us very nicely your plan for tax breaks for Northerners. And I've got a whole bleeding bunch of Northerners here that want to talk to you. Now, if you'll tell me to be cool, I'll try the system once again.
Jack, be cool and just try it once again.
Just put the feedback down a little bit, please. Just a little bit. Take it down a little bit. I don't want to
Tells you how isolated we sometimes feel in the north. We actually have to come down here and talk
You're
to
isolated in the north. Here am I isolated in Lake City and Burnaby. Are you there? Are you there, ma'am? Now, after the count of 3, would you please start to speak and we'll see if this system is working this morning.
I'd like to say that I like the equitable tax idea
Yeah?
very much. But I don't agree with Mr. Oberle regarding his ideas on the new budget and the energy situation.
Well, he is, of course, a conservative. Do continue your conversation.
Well, for one thing, he talked about a semi-socialist state and said that this country was built as a free enterprise country. I think that the fathers of Confederation really built a semi-socialist state. It was partially free enterprise and partially socialism. Because after all, he made the federal government responsible for transportation all across the country and other similar items. And we really are a mixed entity.
Very well said, ma'am. And now I shall ask Mr. Oberle what he really thinks of Pierre Trudeau, and not to be libelous. Go on.
Jack, listen, I have nothing but the highest regard for Mr. Trudeau's intellect, for his own vision of Canada. He's maybe only 100 years ahead of his time, but he's listen, can I say he's a bloody menace to us right now, and we should get rid of him. We really should.
When did I ever stop you from saying anything? Say it again.
You agree with me?
In Quesnel, Are you there in Quesnel? Count three. This is amateur day at the television station. Count three and begin to talk on the air, will you please? 1, 2, 3.
Hello, Mr. Oberle.
Yes, hi. Hello.
Go ahead, please.
Really?
Yeah. No, he can't hit it back.
I see.
He just can't. He's not bright enough from Quesnel this morning. I told you to speak, didn't I?
You pushed the wrong button.
Okay. Well,
Jack.
just you keep speaking and pretend Oberle isn't here. Just say your piece.
Okay, Mr. Oberle, I would just like to say you're talking about a different tax break for the people that work up in the North Country here.
Yes.
Carry on.
But how would that work for the unions that are sent up here to cover up the jobs that instead of people that are working here?
Tell her to take some reaction.
Yeah. Can I talk into your speaker?
Would they get that same tax break?
Yeah. Can I talk into your speaker so your client can hear me there, Jack?
Steve, come here a minute.
Can you hear me?
He can't hear you, but he's going to talk into just sit there like a dummy, and he'll try and hear you. No, they're not listening to the delay, Fred. Don't tell me stupid things. The phones aren't working. I
Down,
give up
Jack.
on them. Absolutely infuriating. Are you there? Okay, well, count three and speak, will you please?
Hello, Mr. Webster. Yes, good morning. I must congratulate your guest there on his policy regarding the Northern Affairs taxation. I worked on the Jew line way back in 1962, and at that time I was making roughly about $25,000 a year, and I paid approximately $6,000 income tax to the government. We were in extremely isolated conditions on Baffin Island and also on Victoria Island, right along from Alaska to Greenland. We put in very hard work, not so much as physical work, but mentally hard conditions for the defense of this country. We thought that we deserved all the money we made, but we paid a considerable amount of income tax to the government. $6,000 in 1962 could have bought half a house, for instance.
That's right.
And I advocated the same policy as Mr. Oberle is talking about. Way back in 1962, this was discussed around the table at Main complex on Baffin Island. Most of the northern people pay high prices for gasoline. Say, for example, I worked for CN Rail at Fort Nelson not long ago, and the cost of gasoline there was $2, while at the same time in Vancouver was only $1.
Right.
The taxation plan that he implements has far-reaching effects, but because not only will it distribute the population, you'll get more people going into the north if that plan would be implemented.
That's exactly
and
it.
The cost of housing and land in Vancouver and more urban areas will drop.
Yeah.
And this is perhaps the answer to a lot of the congestion which is in the southern parts of the country.
Yeah, the report hopes to achieve two things. First of all, to bring about a degree of equity and fairness in treating taxpayers who live in different parts of the country, in high-cost areas of the country.
Frank.
And to stimulate northern development, get young people,
How long are you
particularly.
gonna
Jack,
stay?
we've got...
Just a minute, Frank.
Yeah.
I'm rattled this morning. You know I'm rattled this morning. I'm rattled because the damn thing
phone's
isn't
not
working.
working,
How long are you going to be in town?
Till 12 o'clock.
Can you stay in town overnight?
No, I can't. No,
You can't?
I'm up in Mackenzie tonight to speak to the masses. They're celebrating their...
I'm so upset this morning I'm smoking on the air, as you can see.
Yeah, I'd like to come back, Jack. This is an important topic.
It sure is blazes is. Everything would go wrong this morning. Just let's try it once more, just for laughs.
All right. Now, stay cool.
Can you laugh?
Stay cool.
And I want you to accept my humble apologies
Oh, that's quite all right, then.
for this foul up this morning. We didn't know it was here. It's something in the system somewhere. Are you there? No. Are you there?
That's the kind of frustration we suffer sometimes in the North. You know, we're as alienated from the...
No, it's not really. I mean, I've been on the air now for 2.5 years, doing what's a fairly average television program, keeping up an incredible standard of mediocrity, dealing quite brightly with people from time to time, but an integral part of the program, and I do apologize for this foul up this morning. And I guarantee you that the next time you're available, you won't be here before the 12th of December, will you?
Oh, it could be, yeah.
Could be.
Could be.
If you're coming down to Vancouver to do your Christmas shopping because the prices are cheaper.
I could stop in on the way back, Jack. I'm probably coming back next Monday.
You let me know and I'll dump off Trudeau or anybody else who's on to make room for Frank Oberle so we can demonstrate to the people in the North, the first time we've let them down, that we can handle the telephone calls. And thank you very much indeed, and I'm only snitty to myself, not to anybody else here.
I'm actually having a lot of fun with you here this morning.
You think it's funny?
Yeah, right.
I don't. Take a break. We'll see what happens. I shall now wipe from my mind that particularly unfortunate sequence where the telephones didn't work. And we're going to have a very pleasant program from here to the end. Because with me is Richard Ellis, who is one of America's most celebrated marine artists, and he specializes in whales. And he's here for the aquarium, haven't you, Richard?
Right.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's do a nice, pleasant interview from here till the end. Tell me something about yourself. How did you become one of America's most celebrated artists on marine matters?
I started working in museums as an exhibition designer, and I did that at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, where I designed the Hall of the Biology of Fishes and also hung the model, designed the model of a 94-foot blue whale that hangs in that exhibition hall. And that was actually the beginning. That was around 1966. That was the beginning of my interest in whales and trying to figure out what they actually looked like.
The monitor. Now, I made an ad lib remark this morning when I saw your shoulders that you were a scuba diver. Am I right?
That's correct, yes.
That gives you the chest expansion. You're a kind of an American Cousteau in your own little way, are you?
Well, I don't really think I'm that. I am primarily concerned with communicating the information about these animals rather than developing a particular philosophy about them.
I have a friend who communicates with whales.
I'm not talking about communicating with whales, I'm talking about communicating with people.
His name is Farley Mowat.
Oh, I know about
And
him.
Hollywood has just done a movie on a tragic thing in Newfoundland where this whale got stranded.
I know the story.
And where the locals potted it with rifles until they finally destroyed it.
Right.
Hard to believe that there are people who would do that to the greatest living thing on the earth.
Well, it's not all that hard to believe because it turns out that people know very, very little about whales, and that is actually the reason I wrote this book.
Well, Greenpeace has made us all conscious of whales.
But they haven't explained enough about the whales themselves. They sort of give you the impression that these are very special animals, which they are, but without bothering to tell you why. And it seems to me very important that you understand, that one understands why they are different and why they are special, and that's the reason I paint pictures of them, because it turns out that very few people know very much about what they look like.
But they're different and special because they're part of life on this earth and in the seas, and they're there. And they're large.
Well, you know that. And well, they're not all large, you see. They're not all those greatest of living things. There are some little porpoises and dolphins which are closely related to whales that are 5 or 6 feet long and weigh 80 or 100 pounds.
Believe it or not, one of the most exciting things I ever saw in my life was when I was in a halibut boat in the Gulf of Alaska as a spare crew member. And day after day, when the weather was half decent, these gorgeous dolphins, porpoises, dolphins, would parallel the boat, and they looked like DC-8s. They did. They looked like they were brown, as I recall.
Okay.
They nosed the boat all the way through the water as long as the water was quite calm.
Right.
They seemed to want human contact.
Well, it's clear that they enjoy playing around boats. Whether or not they actually enjoy human contact when they're not in captive situations is problematical. We really don't know.
Well, aren't there old Greek myths about the porpoises rescuing babies and people at sea?
Oh, there are an infinite number of myths about what porpoises and dolphins or even whales are capable of doing. But when you examine the myths closely, you find out that often they are just that. They're just stories and not necessarily documentable.
Well, from myth to politics, you were a member of the American delegation to the International,
International Whaling Commission.
Whaling Commission in 1980.
Correct.
Was that the year Canada refused to cast the casting vote to protect the whales?
Absolutely.
Should we be thoroughly ashamed of that?
If we understood why Canada did it, we would have a better idea of the nature of the international politics.
It must have been a quid pro quo with somebody from whom we wanted something.
It may have been, as the Canadian commissioner said, it may have been a desire to keep the International Whaling Commission together. There was very definitely a feeling that if the moratorium on killing whales was passed, that the major nations that are involved in whale killing, namely the Russians and the Japanese, would walk out. That is what the Canadian commissioner said. We really don't know. That seems to be a legitimate argument.
With your vast knowledge of whales, would you concede that in the final analysis, if there is a sufficiency of whales, that they could still properly be a member of the food supply for the more important human race?
I think that they could, yes, but I also know that in the past the whale populations have been so terribly exploited that there are hardly any whale populations left now that can be used as a food resource, and it will take many, many years before the whale populations come back.
You brought some of your paintings with you, didn't you?
Right.
We're going to slap them up on the monitor if all goes well this morning, and you're going to tell me what they are, who they are, how many there are, and how we should love them. These two on the monitor.
Those are narwhals, and they are among the most interesting of all whales. The lower one in that picture is a male narwhal.
Is that a spike?
That is a tooth, in fact. That is the upper left canine tooth of the male animal. What you see there is all the teeth that a pair of narwhals have between them. Females have no teeth, and the males have no other teeth but that one.
What did you do with the tooth?
I don't know. Nobody knows, really. All the theories about those teeth are easily shot down. The most obvious one, of course, is that the whale spears its food with a tooth like that.
Lots of narwhals? Narwhals? Narwhals?
Narwhals, N-A-R-W-H-A-L.
Lots of them?
No, not lots of them.
Next slide.
The large one in that picture is the bowhead whale, which is the subject of this major controversy between the American government and the Alaskan Eskimos. There are certainly not lots of those. There are, in fact, 2,264 of them left, and the Alaskan Eskimos continue to hunt.
How can you say 2,264?
They count them. They all pass very close to shore, and they're able to count them.
Let me see the bullhead again. No, I want to see the bullhead again.
Bowhead.
Bowhead. I want to see the bowhead again. Yeah, is that a flap to its mouth?
That is the strainer that hangs from its upper jaw that enables it to filter out small organisms from the water, and then it forces the water out through that sieve-like arrangement.
That's to get the
krill or small crustaceans that
What's the other one for it? Plankton.
Plankton. Or
krill.
Or krill.
Shrimps and things.
Yeah, they're little bitty things, so they're not as big as
When we come to
shrimps.
the one that swallowed Jonah, let me know, will you?
That's the one on the cover of the book.
Well, we'll come to that in a little while. Next one.
This is the beluga.
Oh, we had one that died here.
You had a baby born here.
A baby born,
right?
And it
in
died.
fact, this painting was done from the photographs taken of that baby that was born here.
You did it up here?
No, I did it from photographs that were sent to me by the Vancouver Aquarium. There have only been 2 of them born in captivity. That's a picture of one of them. They are visible at the Vancouver Aquarium. The adults are. They are white when they're adults, and they're born being a kind of a brownish gray
Okay,
color.
back to the camera for a minute. How does that aquarium stack up?
It's one of the best in the world.
No kidding.
Oh, yes.
We don't believe that, you know.
Well, you ought to.
I mean, we don't take the pride in it. Perhaps we should.
Well, it has a worldwide reputation. I've been to most of the aquariums, certainly in North America, and some in Europe as well.
Yeah, I think sea life in Hawaii is a bit tacky.
Sea Life Park, well, it's a commercial operation. It has no
finesse.
research function, whereas in Hawaii there is a small aquarium that's associated with the University of Hawaii, which does some rather serious research.
Do you, Richard Ellis, believe that we should take these magnificent mammals and confine them in piddly little pools?
I think that there are some instances in which we should, because that is the only way we're going to learn anything about them.
Good. No phone calls. More with Richard Ellis after the break.
Hello, Jack.
Richard Ellis and his Book of Whales. Richard, you're going to be lecturing where and when?
I'm going to be lecturing at the aquarium tomorrow night.
In Vancouver?
In Vancouver, right.
What times?
I will be there in the afternoon to autograph books, and then the lecture is at 7 o'clock.
I hesitate to ask how much.
How much
We'll
the
show
book
you the
costs.
book in a minute. Wait till you see the book. Let's see the next visual. What's that?
That is the blue whale. That is the largest animal that has ever lived on Earth.
That's the one we get off the coast of Vancouver Island.
You may get them that far north. You certainly get them in eastern Canada. I've filmed them from the air in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and they are absolutely spectacular to see. It's hard to believe that an animal can get to be that big. That animal can get to be over 100 feet long and weigh well over 150 tons.
You know, I used to go up to a whaling station at Cole Harbour on a little ship called the Tassus Prince.
Right.
It's not that long ago. It's 20 years, and they were flensing them on one occasion when we were there. All that kind of Canadian whaling is finished, isn't it?
There is a 10-year moratorium on Canadian whaling, which will end, as I understand it, in a year or two. And there is some talk that the Canadians, particularly in Newfoundland, may go back into the non-commercial whaling business. There are whales in Newfoundland that get themselves tangled up in the cod traps. And the fishermen there are very, very bitter about it, and they want the government to protect their fishing industry by killing the whales.
What kind of whales?
Humpback whales.
Humpbacks. They're a good commercial whale, aren't they?
No, they are among the rarest of whales. They're slow swimming, and they've been eliminated throughout virtually their entire range. They were found off the east coast of North America, off the west coast, in the waters off Hawaii. These are the whales that sing. I don't know whether you've heard the...
Can you sing the song?
No, I can't.
You
do it.
can't?
I don't have the.
Let me see the cover of the book.
range.
Now, that's the cover of the book. Draw it back and let's see the full cover. Back up to the whale again, because I have a question to ask about this. Which whale is that?
That's the sperm whale.
Is that the one that swallowed Jonah?
Well, it's the only one of these whales, one of the large whales, that would be capable of doing that. This is the whale that eats, among other things, giant squid. And there have been sperm whales taken with giant squid in their stomachs that weighed over 400 pounds, so that this whale would be quite capable of swallowing a human being.
The rest all suck in their krill and their plankton.
The rest of the large ones do.
Through baleen, is that
Baleen
correct?
plates. Well, they don't suck it in. They take a big mouthful, then they close their mouth and they force the water out through those plates, which are sort of like Venetian blinds, and all the krill, the little shrimp-like animals, are stuck inside, and then they swallow them.
There was a time when the whale was a very useful commercial animal in a reasonable kind of way, I suppose, in the South Antarctic, when the Norwegians and the Scotch and all these people must have been reasonably fishing whales because their methods were so primitive.
Well, they were very efficient, however. In the 1930s, which was the peak of the Antarctic whaling history, they managed to take something like 30,000 blue whales in a single year.
In South Georgia?
Right, out of South Georgia and other, well, actually they started out being land-based, and then in, I think it was 1925, the stern slipway was invented whereby they could haul up an entire whale on board one of these enormous 450-foot factory ships and process the whale on board ship. So they were no longer tied to the land, and they no longer needed the South Georgia tight land bases.
Mm. I'm a little acerbic now and again at organizations like Greenpeace, you know, perhaps unfairly so, but nevertheless, I sometimes think there's a lot of self-glorification involved in the leadership of these things. And I had Brian Davies in here for the International Fund for the Welfare of Animals, and I've done a piece with Paul Watson, who works for Cleveland Emery.
Right.
He's a freebooter who gets paid to go out and hunt whaling ships, the illegal whaling ships. I rather like Paul Watson, I must say.
So do I.
But what about the actual stocks now, the likes of that sperm whale?
The sperm whales are perhaps the most numerous of all the large whales now. All the other baleen whales. The sperm whale has teeth.
We still hunt them?
Well, it depends on who we are.
I mean, we, mankind.
We, mankind, still hunt sperm whales, but in greatly reduced numbers. 10 years ago, the quota for sperm whales in the North Pacific was over 25,000. At this year's IWC meeting, which was held in Brighton, England, the quota for North Pacific sperm whales was 890. So
because that's all they can get out of the crop.
No, no, there are lots of sperm whales out there.
So the sperm whales are safe.
But people can't eat them. They're inedible. And they boil down the oil and the meat, and they use it either to feed they make pet food out of it. They feed fur animals using it. Minks, right. And they do that in Russia, and in Japan they use the stuff for fertilizer. So all of the things they make from whales are easily synthesized.
Well, they tried to market whale meat in Britain during the war. I never ate any, fortunately. But what whale did that come from?
Probably the fin whale.
And then they made margarine.
They still do.
From what?
From the oil. From the oil of sperm whales.
Of sperm whales?
They're now hunting the smallest of the baleen whales, a whale called a minke whale. There is no more sperm whale hunting allowed in the open ocean, no more pelagic sperm whale hunting. And so the Russian and Japanese fleets have gone to the Antarctic to hunt the minke whale, which is the smallest of the baleen whales, an animal that gets to be at most 30 feet long. And these also will be tried out and used for oil, and they make shoe polish and margarine and lipstick.
I remember once when I was down in Baja California, somebody pointed out a bay to me where they used to hammer them to death, grey whales.
Well, I don't know whether they ever hammered them to death.
They put up a little dam and...
Well, no, the whales come into these lagoons.
Tell me about the grey whales in California.
The grey whales make the longest migration of any animal, of any mammal. They swim some 13,000 miles round trip from the Bering Sea all the way down to Baja California, where they breed and calve in these protected lagoons. In 1848, a whaling captain out of San Francisco named Charles Melville Scammon discovered these breeding lagoons, and he led the San Francisco whaling fleets into these lagoons and virtually eliminated the gray whales. They came back, and then in the 30s and 40s, Norwegian whaling fleets began to pick them off again. They are now fully protected, and they're now thought to be about 15,000 gray whales left in the world.
So on the positive side, when the IWC, the International Whaling Commission, makes a recommendation and votes on it, the regulations are followed.
As far as we can tell, the regulations are followed. There are observers from other countries allowed on board the whaling ships of the Russians and the Japanese and the other countries that are involved in whaling, and these observers report that, in fact, the whaling nations do follow the recommendations of the International Whaling Commission.
Okay, now back to the scuba diving. Tell me about it. Any exciting adventures? Can anybody put on a scuba suit, dive in, and swim alongside whales, as I've seen on television?
It depends on what country you try and do it in. You can't do it in the United States.
But what about the whales? It's not the...
Well, you can't do it in the United States coastal waters.
Why?
Because we have something called the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which was designed, among other things, to keep people from harassing whales.
But the whales would like to do it.
Oh yeah, I've done it. I've done it, but I haven't done it in American waters. Last year, at about this time, I was in southern Argentina, and I was diving with animals called right whales. And in southern Argentina, a place called Peninsula Valdez is the only known breeding area for these very rare whales, and we went down there in November and December of last year, and we were diving with these enormous animals. It was...
How close?
Oh, touching them. Touching them.
They don't mind?
They seem to tolerate you. They know you're there. They're very much aware of you. They lift their flippers or their flukes so that they get out of your way, and you very carefully get out of theirs, because this is an 80-ton animal that can launch itself completely from the water. So you don't want to get bumped into by an animal like that. But
or caught between two.
Oh, you certainly don't want to do that.
Do the births take place at sea?
They do, as far as we know. The births of whales have been very, very infrequently observed. The gray whales deliver their calves in the lagoons of Baja California, and these right whales also deliver their calves in the protected gulfs of Peninsula Valdez. It is believed, incidentally, that the gestation period of some of these whales is no more than a year, because they make annual migrations and they come back every year to deliver their calves in the same place.
I wish I'd been there one day. I missed a chance to see some big whales of some kind scraping their bellies on the rocks at Long Beach on the west coast of Vancouver Island. This is routine?
Yeah, Many of them are covered with parasites of one sort or another, and they often scrape themselves either on rocks or on the bottom.
Why do they seem to commit suicide sometimes?
I don't really think they do. I think that...
beaching themselves,
Yeah,
I mean.
well, I think that individual whales that beach themselves are doing it, as Farley Mowat pointed out in that book. When that whale was so badly injured, it was a female, subsequently discovered to have been pregnant, when she was so badly injured, she got to the point where she could breathe. Remember, breathing for a whale is a voluntary act. The whale has to, if whales think, the whale has to be in a position where it can breathe. Unlike you and I, the whale has to be where its nostrils can be above the water. So that if a whale is badly injured, it might, and we don't really know this, but this is, I think, a reasonable theory, it might get itself to a place where it won't sink when it breathes. And that creates a terrific problem for people who would save the whale. Here's an animal, as Mowat pointed out in A Whale for the Killing, here's an animal that is so badly injured it had to get in shallow water so it wouldn't sink. If it sinks, it will drown, remember.
Yeah. But what about the other ones that sometimes run themselves up on the beach in herd? Is it a herd of whales or a flock of whales?
Oh, it can be a herd, it can be a flock, it can be a pod, a school. There are any number of terms used to describe them. We don't really know why that is. The theory is that one of them may be badly injured and is emitting some sort of signal, some sort of sounds. Whales communicate regularly by sound, emitting some sort of sounds that keeps the rest of the school or the pod following it. And as it beaches itself, the other members do. Often when the whale that is sending out these signals, the actually injured whale, dies, the others will turn around.
And go.
But hauling the whale back into the water often is counterproductive, because the whale will drown if it is in deep water, and it wants to get into shallow water.
It's got to be like in a bathtub.
Well, it has to be in a place where it won't sink below the surface so it can't breathe.
How old are you, Richard?
42.
Make a good living at this caper, the whale caper?
I have a good time.
You have a good time?
Right.
First book?
Second book.
Oh,
actually, I've written a book about sharks, and this book about whales is actually half the project, because it only involves the large whales. The porpoises and dolphins are going to be in the second book.
How much do you know about sharks?
A lot.
Quite a lot. Do you know how in Hawaii they tell you there are no sharks around? Do you believe them?
No. I was surfing in Hawaii, and the director of the Waikiki Aquarium told me just 2 days ago a story of a person who was on a surfboard, and something lifted the surfboard up, and he thought it was one of his friends, and he picked up the board and he was going to bop him on the head, and suddenly this enormous mouth came out and took a huge bite out of the surfboard. It was a tiger shark.
So Hawaii is safe if you're behind a reef?
If you're on land.
Oh, come off it. You don't mind sharks, do you?
I think that they've been overly maligned. I think that, first of all, there are a lot of sharks in the water. If sharks
Richard,
hit people...
You've been a godsend this morning, I'll tell you. Aquarium tomorrow.
Aquarium tomorrow.
Richard Ellis on whales and the Book of Whales.
Thank you.
Erudite, informative, charming, even though he is an American. After the break.